They say a man doesn't know when his family stops being his. But I did. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't loud. It was slow, a kind of erosion, like watching paint peel off the walls, day after day, until the color you once loved becomes something you don't recognize. I lived in a house where my name was on the deed, but my presence was conditional. Spoken around, not to. Thanked with silence. Not hated, that would have been easier. Just dismissed. I'm Tom, 45 now. I met Carol 11 years ago. She was 35 then, already deep in another life. 2 kids, a tired voice, and a nervous laugh like she hadn't had space to exhale in years. Her ex had left when Brian was 7 and Maddie 5. Just packed his things one Sunday morning and never looked back. Child support came in fragments. Unemployment, then some hustle involving cryptocurrency and motorcycles. Nothing stable. We met at a church picnic, if you can believe it. I was there because my buddy dragged me. Said I needed to meet someone not broken by divorce. That turned out to be a lie. Carol was broken, just quieter about it. She made potato salad no one ate. I told a joke no one laughed at. Somehow we ended up sitting on the same bench while her kids kicked dirt at each other near the swing set. She had this look in her eye, worn down, yes, but still reaching. Like part of her still wanted to believe she hadn't lost everything. That look got to me. We dated for 10 months before I proposed. No big speech. No kneeling. Just one night after the kids were asleep, I asked her if she wanted to stop surviving and start living again. I said, "Let me help carry it." She nodded, like she wanted to believe I could. I moved in a month later. The townhouse was falling apart. Leaky roof, paper-thin walls, neighbors that screamed at each other through the vents. Brian barely looked at me. Maddie hovered behind door frames, peeking. Carol apologized constantly. For the mess, the noise, the tension in the air that no candle could mask. Still, I showed up. Grocery runs, school pickups, helped Brian with math homework, even though he refused to say thank you. Painted Maddie's room lavender because she whispered once that it was her favorite color. Quiet things, careful steps. When we married, I bought a place near Portland. My name on the deed, my credit on the line. Down payment straight from my savings, the savings I'd built through years of subcontracting and working weekends others turned down. No prenup. I didn't think I needed one. I believed in the idea of family, that it was bigger than blood, deeper than paperwork. People said, "You're building something together," but the receipts said otherwise. The mortgage was mine. The repairs were mine. The late-night worry about bills? Mine too. I built custom shelves in the kids' rooms. Fixed the AC twice. Drove 3 hours to pick up a second-hand piano Maddie mentioned liking. Paid for therapy when Brian started getting into fights at school, quietly, without complaint. I thought, this is what a real man does. This is what dad means. But the word never came. Not from them. Sometimes I'd hear Maddie tell her friends, "That's just my mom's husband." Brian, if pressed, would say Tom. Always flat, like it left a bad taste in his mouth. Once, I heard him say, "He's not my real dad," to a classmate who asked about our last names. Carol told me not to take it personally. "They're still adjusting," she said. "They've been through a lot." I nodded. Of course. Kids take time. That was year 2. By year 4, I was paying for private lessons, violin for Maddie, driving school for Brian. Carol worked part-time at a clinic, but most of her income went toward groceries and gas. I covered everything else, insurance, utilities, vacations, every unexpected cost that came up. And they came up often. The kids never asked where the money came from. They assumed it just showed up. Maybe they thought Carol made it work on her own. Maybe they didn't care. I once tried to explain interest rates to Brian when he asked why we didn't get a bigger TV. He rolled his eyes and walked away. Still, I showed up. One winter, when the power went out during a storm, I stayed up all night running the generator and keeping the fireplace going. Carol sat with Maddie under blankets in the living room. Brian played games on his fully charged phone. When the lights came back, no one said thank you. The next morning, I found muddy footprints all over the kitchen floor. Brian had come in from the backyard, grabbed snacks, and tracked dirt everywhere. I called him out on it. He shrugged. It's just a floor. That was the first time I heard it. The edge in his voice. Like I was an inconvenience. An employee in a house I'd paid for. Still, I cleaned the floors. Because that's what you do, right? You keep going. You swallow the pride. Carol rarely intervened. She'd say, he's a teenager. Or you're too hard on him. But when her ex showed up once a month, late, usually smelling like beer and bad decisions, he'd bring pizza and toys and suddenly he was the hero. The kids lit up when they saw him. Brian even hugged him once, in front of me. He never paid child support on time. He never stayed longer than an hour. But somehow he was Dad. I was just Tom. Still, I showed up. I fixed the dishwasher. I rewired the garage. I sat with Carol during her biopsy scare and held her hand so tight she had bruises. When she came back from the doctor and said it was benign, she cried into my chest. That was one of the few moments she looked at me like I was necessary. But necessity fades when comfort returns. Over the years, Carol's gratitude became routine. Her thank yous came late or not at all. The kids stopped trying. I began to feel like a contractor who'd overstayed his job site. Useful but not welcome. There were signs. Little ones. At dinner, Brian would ask her questions without looking at me. Maddie would text under the table. When I asked about their days, I'd get one-word answers. When I brought up chores, they'd ignore me until Carol repeated the request. Then, and only then, would they move. But never with respect. By year 7, I stopped expecting Father's Day cards. I told myself, it's just a date. By year 9, I stopped expecting to be asked what I wanted for dinner. I cooked for them anyway. By year 10, I realized I hadn't been hugged in over 6 months. I still remember the sound of the garage door opening that evening. I was coming home late from a job site. Long day, back sore, hands cracked from winter wind. The house was loud. Music, laughter. Brian had friends over. Carol was upstairs. I walked in. The kitchen was a mess. Food wrappers, spilled soda, dishes stacked high. I started cleaning, quiet as always. One of Brian's friends looked at me and said, "Hey, who's that?" Brian replied without even glancing over, "Just my mom's husband. He pays the bills." Laughter. Then the sentence. He said it with a shrug, like it didn't matter. Mom's real family is just us. He's the extra. I didn't flinch, didn't speak. I just finished drying the plate in my hand, set it down gently on the counter, and walked to the thermostat. Turned off the heating, walked upstairs, removed my card from the shared Amazon account, canceled the autopay on the mortgage, turned off the lights in the office, the same office I'd used to write checks, track spending, plan birthday surprises. Then I sat at the kitchen table. I printed a folder of expenses, 11 years worth. Groceries, insurance, gifts, rent, medical bills, repairs, college savings plans. All with my name on the line. I put the folder on the table. On top, I placed a sticky note. It said, "You never had to love me, but you do have to respect the math." Then I walked out. No fight, no slammed door, no goodbye. Just a man finally hearing the silence for what it was. Truth. Money was never my love language. It was how I survived. I grew up with hands that knew calluses before they knew affection. My father was a carpenter, his praise measured in whether your cut was square and your tools put away. My mother worked nights cleaning offices, her knees giving out before her hope ever did. I watched them scrape and claw and sacrifice, not for applause, not for thanks, but because it was what needed doing. So when I met Carol, I didn't bring flowers. I brought groceries. I fixed the loose cabinet in her kitchen. I paid the back rent she hadn't mentioned but I'd seen in the unopened envelope by the door. She cried when she found out. Said no one had ever done something like that for her. I believed her. But you learn over time that being needed is not the same as being wanted. And being used is not the same as being loved. I paid for everything. Not just the big stuff, the mortgage, the minivan, the health insurance, but the invisible things. Copays, prescriptions, band uniforms, hockey fees, Maddie's braces, Brian's therapy after he punched a classmate in the face during 8th grade. Carol asked me if I thought we could afford it. I said, "We'll make it work." And I did. No one ever said thank you. I told myself that was fine. I wasn't doing it for the gratitude. I was doing it because that's what family means. You show up. You cover the gap. You don't keep score. But that's a lie, isn't it? We all keep score. Some of us just do it in silence. Some of us stack every unacknowledged gesture like bricks until they form a wall so tall no one can hear us anymore. I remember the day I bought Brian his first car. It was a used Honda Silver 2012 with 110,000 miles on it. Not flashy, but clean, safe. He had passed his test, barely, and Carol was too anxious to let him keep using her van. So I searched listings for weeks, found a decent deal, drove 2 hours to inspect it myself, paid cash, brought it home with a red bow on the hood. Brian came outside, saw the car and said, "That's it. No hug, no gratitude, just a grimace. You couldn't have gotten something newer?" I laughed, thinking he was joking. He wasn't. He got in, slammed the door, and drove off. No plate, no insurance. I had to chase him down 2 days later to remind him to get both. Carol shrugged. Teenagers, they don't always show appreciation. She said that often. Every time they disrespected me, minimized me, acted like I was the live-in janitor with a credit card, she had a reason. He's under stress. She's just tired. They're still getting used to you. Still, after 10 years. Still. I was the scaffolding they leaned on while painting over their own neglect. I remember coming home one night after working a double. My boots were soaked. My hands raw. I had spent 14 hours on a freezing rooftop replacing warped shingles. All I wanted was to sit down, eat something hot, and hear something kind. Instead, I walked into a disaster. Empty takeout containers all over the counter. Trash overflowing. Dishes stacked so high I couldn't find a clean glass. Brian was in the living room with 3 of his friends. Feet on the couch, music blasting, video game controllers in their hands. Maddie was nowhere to be seen. Carol was upstairs, door closed. I stood there for a moment, just absorbing the chaos. Then I started cleaning. Quietly. 1 bag of trash. Then 2. Then the sink. I worked like a man trying not to scream. 10 minutes in, Brian walked into the kitchen. Saw me elbow deep in soapy water. Didn't flinch. Didn't offer help. He grinned. That smug, teenage smirk kids get when they think they've won something they didn't earn, and said, loud enough for his friends to hear, "You don't get to tell us what to do. Mom's family is just us. You're just the extra." The words dropped like stones in a bucket. Cold. Heavy. Final. One of his friends laughed. Another looked away. Brian didn't blink. I dried my hands slowly. Looked at him. Really looked at him. And for the first time, I didn't see a boy. I saw a man being shaped by a world that told him consequences were optional. I said, "If I'm not part of the family, then you'll be fine without me." He scoffed, rolled his eyes, walked back into the living room. I didn't raise my voice, didn't throw anything, didn't slam a door. I just left, first emotionally, then practically. The next morning, I sat down with my laptop and started severing ties. Removed myself from the shared bank account. Canceled my auto payments for the mortgage, the utilities, the internet. Called the insurance company and asked to be removed as a co-signer on Carol's car. She texted me 2 hours later. "Hey, did something happen with the electric bill? They're saying it's overdue." I replied, "Ask your family." Then I went into the garage. Took only what was mine. My tools. My grandfather's workbench. A few sentimental things. I didn't touch the TV. Didn't take the couch I bought. Didn't even pack clothes. I had some stashed at the small rental I kept for projects out of town. I just took what I came into the house with. Before I left, I printed a spreadsheet. 11 years of expenses. Line by line. Over $518,000. Not including labor. Not including time. Just the raw math, tuition payments, medical bills, car repairs, gas money, birthdays, Christmases, rent, groceries. Every dollar I poured into a life that was never truly mine. I put it all in a folder, titled it, "The Things You Called Automatic." On top, a sticky note, "You never had to respect me, but you do have to respect the math." Then I left it on the kitchen table and walked out the door. No one chased me. No one called. For the first time in 11 years, the silence wasn't oppressive. It was permission. The next day, I filed for divorce. No yelling. No threats. Just paperwork. I didn't want alimony. Didn't ask for furniture. All I wanted was clarity. Either Carol could buy me out of the house or we'd sell it and split the equity. I left that choice to her. She didn't respond for 3 days. When she finally did, it was a single sentence. "Can we talk about this?" I said no. "You made it clear I was the extra. Extras don't get conversations." Then Brian called. He was angry, furious, his voice full of wounded pride. "You blew everything up over one comment?" I replied, "You didn't want me. I just removed myself." He hung up. 2 days later, the water got shut off. Carol called. "We're behind. I didn't realize you were handling that too. Can you? Just for now?" I said, "The house is yours. So is the family. Handle it." Then came the last surprise. Mark, the biological father. The man who spent 11 years showing up just enough to keep his title, but never enough to carry weight, called me. He sounded nervous. Said the kids were going through a lot. That this is hard on everyone. That maybe we could figure out something that's best for them. I asked, "You mean like you stepping up for once in your life?" Silence. I added, "They're your kids. Handle it." Click. Weeks passed. Bills piled up. I heard through mutual friends that Carol had to borrow money from her sister. That Brian was using his savings for gas and groceries. That Maddie had started looking for part-time jobs. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel vengeance. I felt nothing. When you've spent a decade screaming in silence, the absence of noise feels like truth. The real kind. And when it comes, it doesn't ask if you're ready. It just arrives and waits for your answer. You learn a lot about people when you stop carrying their weight. The first week after I left, the house sat in denial. Carol didn't tell anyone. Not at first. The kids kept posting selfies like nothing had changed. Maddie at school with her friends. Brian flexing beside the car I'd bought. Captioned, "Hard work pays off," as if he had ever paid for anything more than a streaming subscription. I stayed quiet. I didn't argue. I didn't comment. I just watched the scaffolding fall away, piece by piece, like a structure built with no foundation. By week 2, the water had been turned off. Carol called me again, voice tight, like she was trying not to cry. She didn't ask how I was. Didn't say my name. Just launched into logistics. "We're behind on utilities. I didn't know the electric bill was in your name. Can you just for this month until I figure it out?" I said, "The house is yours. The family is yours. So are the bills." She went quiet, then said, "This is really childish." That word, childish, it stuck with me. I'd kept that house standing for 11 years. I'd made late-night calls to service providers, fought with mechanics, drove an hour out of my way just to pick up the right tile when Maddie said her bathroom felt depressing. And now, after 3 weeks without my credit card on file, I was childish. I didn't yell. I didn't defend myself. I just hung up. By week 3, the phone plan lapsed. Brian texted me from someone else's number. Just 2 words, "Really classy." I didn't answer. The car insurance expired next. Then the Netflix account. Then the automatic deposit I'd set up for Maddie's tutoring sessions bounced back. And the school emailed Carol asking for updated billing. It was quiet revenge. But it wasn't revenge. It was a correction. I had spent over a decade being treated like a necessary inconvenience. Like the couch you complain about but never replace, because you know deep down you'd be screwed without it. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. I was just showing them what life looked like when the extra was removed from the equation. Brian called again, this time angrier. Voice strained, almost frantic. "You're really gonna leave Mom to deal with all this? What kind of man just walks out?" I said, The kind you said wasn't part of the family. He cursed under his breath, then added, "You're blowing up everything over one sentence." I paused, then asked, "What's the difference between a sentence and a belief?" He didn't answer. The call ended in silence. I kept a journal during those days. Not because I thought anyone would ever read it, but because I needed a record. Proof that I hadn't imagined it all. The dinners where I was excluded, the holidays where my gifts were unwrapped last or forgotten entirely, the nights I lay awake listening to Carol laugh at her ex-husband's messages while I folded laundry downstairs. I kept the receipts. Now I was keeping the memories. 3 weeks after I left, Carol texted, "Are you serious about the divorce?" I replied with a photo. The signed documents, time-stamped, already filed. She didn't respond. That was the last time I heard from her directly. From then on, everything came through Maddie. The first message was short. No subject line. Just, "The piano's out of tune. No one knows who to call." It made me laugh. Not because it was funny, but because of how perfectly it captured the gap I'd left. That piano, the one I drove hours to get, tuned every 6 months, bought sheet music for. It had been played for years, but never maintained. Just like me. A week later, she emailed again. "Brian's trying to sell the car. Says he needs the cash. Mom doesn't know. I just thought you should." I didn't reply. Not because I didn't care, but because I did. And caring had cost me enough. Then, on a Tuesday morning at 2:13 a.m., I got the message that cracked something inside me. "I said you weren't our dad because I wanted to hurt you. I didn't think you'd actually leave. I didn't realize how much you did until it all stopped. I'm sorry." Maddie, the quiet one, the observer, the girl who used to sit on the stairs when she thought no one could see, watching me build bookshelves or clean the gutters. I read that message 4 times. Then again. Then closed my laptop without responding. Not out of spite, but because I needed to think. To ask myself what I wanted now that the world I'd propped up was crumbling under its own weight. That weekend, I drove by the house. Just once. I stayed in the truck. Didn't park. Just watched. The lawn hadn't been mowed. The trash bins were overflowing. The blinds in the living room were bent and stuck halfway. Someone had backed into the mailbox and never fixed it. It looked abandoned. But I knew they still lived there. I knew because the porch light, the one I'd installed, motion-activated, sleek, expensive, still turned on when I passed. That night, I emailed Maddie back. I always cared. But now I care about myself, too. I'm open to reconnecting, but only as adults, and only with respect as the baseline. Not the reward. She replied within an hour. "Okay, I'd like that." We met for coffee the next weekend. Neutral ground. Public, so no one could say or scream too much. She looked tired, older than her 18 years, eyes a little hollow. But when she saw me, she smiled like she meant it. She said she wanted to understand. She asked questions. She listened. Really listened. I told her the truth. That I never wanted to replace her father. That I never expected to be called Dad. That all I ever wanted was to be treated like I mattered, not for what I gave, but for who I was. She nodded. Said she never saw it until I was gone. Said it was like the lights in the house dimmed, but they didn't know why. We didn't hug, but we shook hands when we parted. That meant more. 2 weeks later, she texted again. "Mom's thinking about selling the house. She can't keep up with it. Brian moved in with a friend. Utilities are behind. She cries a lot now." I didn't ask why she was telling me. I just said, "I hope she finds peace." That was all. Eventually, the house went on the market. I watched the listing like a hawk. They priced it too high at first. Sat on the site for 3 months. Then the price dropped twice. I knew every inch of that house. Knew the roof would need repairs. Knew the insulation was crap. Knew that the bathroom remodel I'd begged for never happened. It sold for less than what I'd paid 11 years ago. I received my portion of the equity after the divorce finalized. It wasn't much. Barely a refund on the time I'd invested. But it felt clean. Final. I used the money to buy a small cabin near the coast. 1 bedroom. Quiet. Enough room for my tools. a deck that faces the trees. Sometimes, on rainy nights, I sit on the porch and imagine the sound of that old house. The creak of floorboards, the slam of Brian's bedroom door, the hum of Carol's voice drifting down the hallway when she thought I wasn't listening. I don't miss it, not because it wasn't real, but because I was the only one who thought it was. I still see Maddie once every few months. She's studying to become a nurse, like her mother. She works nights at a diner, saves her tips in a jar with duct tape on the lid. She tells me she wants to learn how to change her own oil. I show her how. Brian never reached out again. Carol sent me a message the day the divorce was finalized. You never even gave us a chance to fix it. I didn't reply, because she was wrong. I gave them 11 years, 11 Christmases, 11 tax returns with their names on the deductions, 11 Februaries with bills paid in full while they told me I wasn't part of the family. The chance to fix it wasn't mine to give. It was theirs, and they never took it. There's a silence that follows betrayal, not the silence of peace, but of aftermath. The kind of silence that comes after a storm, where everything feels too still, too hollow, and you realize it wasn't just the wind that rearranged the house. It was the truth. I live alone now. The cabin is quiet, tucked in a clearing with no neighbors, just trees that creak in the wind like old men settling into their chairs. There's no traffic, no slammed doors, no late-night arguments about curfews or missing laundry. Just me, a coffee pot, and the sound of rain tapping on the tin roof. I rebuilt the porch myself, took my time, each nail, each board, each stroke of stain, done with intention. There's no one here to interrupt, no one to complain about sawdust tracked through the kitchen. It's not much, but it's mine. Mine in a way that no part of that house ever was. Sometimes, I wake up in the middle of the night, heart pounding, thinking I left the thermostat on too high again, or forgot to pay a bill. Old habits, ghost reflexes. Then I remember there's no family to cover for anymore. No unseen pressure to prove I belong in a home that was never built to include me. I don't miss them. That's the hardest part to say out loud. I thought I would. Thought I'd ache for them, cry for them, hold on to some small flicker of what we used to pretend was love. But there's nothing. Carol has stopped reaching out. Maddie still sends texts, little updates, questions about car maintenance, the occasional photo of her in scrubs at the hospital. She signs her messages with just an M. I never ask about Carol. She never brings her up. And Brian, well, he disappeared completely. No apology. No ownership. Just vanished. I heard he works nights stocking shelves at a warehouse. The car I bought him got impounded last year. No insurance. No registration. No clue how to take care of something that wasn't earned. I sometimes wonder if he remembers the sentence that started it all. You're the extra. Probably not. Words like that come easy to people who've never had to build a life from nothing. But me, I remember every syllable. I used to think I'd broken something by leaving, that walking away made me the villain, that somehow all my sacrifices were undone by that one decision. But now, after the dust has settled and the world's gone quiet, I see it clearly. I didn't break the family. I just stopped patching the cracks. They were always there. From the beginning. The disrespect, the silence, the passive aggression disguised as teenage rebellion. Carol's reluctance to correct them. Her fear of being the bad guy. My willingness to be the buffer. The bank account. The man who never asked for anything but carried everything. It was all rotten underneath. I just kept painting over the mold. And now I ask myself the question I've been avoiding. Was I wrong? Was I wrong to withdraw? Was I wrong to stop paying? Was I wrong to demand that love come with respect, and not just need? I don't know. Maybe I'll never know. All I know is this. When I left, I found a part of myself I hadn't heard from in over a decade. A voice that said, "You matter too." A voice that said, "Sacrifice without recognition isn't love. The servitude." And I believed that voice. Still do. So I ask you, not for pity, not for praise, but for truth. If you had been told year after year that you were unwanted, would you have stayed? If your only value was measured in what you provided, never who you were, would you have kept giving? Would you have endured it? Or would you have, finally, done what I did? Would you have walked away? Tell me, because I've already lived the answer.